the last time I spoke here was right before we were closed down with COVID. I think it was like it was March of 2020. So it's been a while since I've been here. So I'm glad to be back. Thank you all very much. Thanks for that nice introduction. I'm thinking, well, there are a lot of people who know a lot more than I do about natives, but my expertise is finding the sources and trying to find where we can find what we need to find when we need to find it, I guess. So thank you, everybody. So lots of different organizations say to plant natives, and I'm going to have to cheat a little bit. I guess I can look up here. I need to be able to use the microphone. I thought I was going to be on stage. That was actually the whole reason why I volunteered, because I thought I was going to be up on the stage with a microphone. I could sing to you, and they said, "Oh no, you have to stand behind that podium over there." So here I am, and welcome also to the folks who are here on Zoom. I saw Peggy Kraft on there. She knows a lot more than I do on native plants, but lots of organizations are talking about native plants and encouraging people to plant them. So why do we care? Why do we care about native plants, and why do we need them? One of the things, native plants, the biggest thing is that native plants have evolved with our native insects. And so we've seen a great drop in native insect populations. You've probably, this year was kind of a bad year for butterflies. I don't know if you noticed that in your yard. I sure noticed it in mine, but I did see a butterfly yesterday. But native insect populations are way down. And so planting native plants that have evolved, that the insects have evolved with, is one way to help increase those insect populations. But lots of different places are telling us to add native plants. And there are a lot of different ways we can add these native plants. So what makes a native a native? For our, well, I'm sorry, can you all hear me? Okay. So what makes a native plant a native plant? Plants that were here before the British arrived, plants that were here before the settlers came from Europe, and that's pretty much true nationwide, are considered native plants. And the kind of the authority here in Virginia is the Flora of Virginia. You've seen the book. I think, do we still have, where's Cherigo? Do we still have the book in the library? Okay, so the Flora of Virginia book is about that thick. It's not one that you would carry around as a field guide in your backpack, because it weighs too much. But there's a nice little Flora of Virginia app. Now it's not a free app. It's about $20, but it's kind of the authority, and it will tell you by county whether it'll tell you by county whether a plant is native or not. So was it here before the English arrived? What have you heard about native plants? I hear people talking about native plants when we are working on native plant projects. I've heard people talk about them as weedy. I've heard say that they're wild, they're invasive. And a lot of native plants, when we think of native plants, oftentimes we think of meadows or prairie plants. And they do, they're fighting for their lives out there on the prairie. And so they do tend to be a little bit scraggly, and they might be a little bit promiscuous too. They like to spread around, get themselves out there. So I've also heard the word invasive. Now, by definition, native plants cannot be invasive. They can be assertive, but they cannot be invasive, because what invasive means is that invasive means that a plant has been brought here from someplace that it wasn't before, and it has been planted, and then it takes over other plants. So it kills out our natives. And we'll see this in the spring. You see it, and I'm going to talk a little bit more later about Bradford pears. So the Bradford pear tree was brought here, was designed as a sterile plant. And guess what? It is sterile with other Bradford pears, but it crossbreeds with every other pear out there. So we thought that the people who created it thought it was going to be sterile, so it wouldn't spread all around. But what it has done is, because it crossbreeds with every other kind of pear out there, we see them everywhere. And I also want to tell you that most of the photographs in this in this slideshow are in my yard. And I have a 1/4 acre yard. We bought a house from a woman who was a collector. And so the main reason I became, well, one of the main reasons I became a master gardener, other than I had wanted to do it for years, was that I wanted to find out what the heck I had in my yard, because I just didn't know. And so this plant right here, does anybody know what that is? It's a native honeysuckle. It's a coral honeysuckle. It's yellow and it's a bit of red. And it is on a tutor. So it's on one of those things like in the botanical garden, the little trellises. Also, if you guys have questions as I go along, I taught at a community college for quite a few years. I like to have questions. So if there's something that's just, one of my friends made the mistake of calling me the other day when I was working on this. She lives in Oregon. I said, oh, I'm working on a presentation for native plants. And she's like, oh, what's that about? So I started talking to her. I'm like, you're gonna listen to my presentation. She's like, okay. So I gotta say that's a really good friend. And so she had questions because she didn't know anything about native plants. So there's several good things about native plants. And I do this one. This picture is not out of my garden. This is one of my new favorite plants. This is wild quinine, and this picture is at the botanical garden in Norfolk. But I actually bought a flat of this year. You can believe that, 32 of them. And it's an interesting plant. It has a long bloom time. It has a white bloom, which is handy for most of our gardens. And it has the foliage on it's fairly low. So all those long leaves on the bottom, you can see those are, and then it shoots up that one tall stem. So native plants need less water. They don't need to be fertilized. You can obviously throw on some compost if you want to. But you don't need to, in general, enhance your soil. And native plants are going to attract more birds and beneficial insects. And one of the things as Americans that we've done, I think, is we really are in the habit of killing insects. If it crawls, we kill it. And that's a mindset that I think we have to get away from a little bit. And hey, I'm carrying spiders out of my house now, and I can tell you that is a really, really big step for me. But if we can get out of the habit of killing everything that crawls. So if we plant native plants in our garden, especially if we happen to pick some plants that are host plants for some of our native butterflies, what's going to happen? Those butterflies are going to come in, they're going to lay eggs, they're going to have caterpillars, and then those caterpillars, some of those caterpillars are going to eat your plants right down to the nub. Yes, yes. I plant parsley every year, not a native plant. Plant parsley every year for the black swallowtails. I don't use it at all to cook with. I just plant it for the swallowtails, but not a native plant. But when you plant things for the butterflies are going to eat what you plant. And so I think it's a real tug of war, because so many of us don't want, we don't want our plants to be eaten, but if we plant native plants, they're going to be eaten. And that's just part of the whole cycle. So I want to ask you, this is not my house. But I did want to ask you, how many of you happily live in an HOA? Okay, a lot of you. I knew that. I knew a lot of you lived in HOAs. And I live in an HOA too. And I happily live in an HOA. I like it that my neighbor can't park his boat in front of my house. I like it that my neighbor can't have his RV. I like that. And some people don't like that, and that's fine. And we all have different things that we like. But what I want to talk about today a little bit is how to work with HOAs, or not really how to work with them, but how to work through them, around them, over them. I don't know. So if you live in an HOA, do you want to rock the boat? I don't want that letter. I don't want that letter that my plants are too high. I don't want that letter that my yard is too weedy. I want to work with my HOA. I want my neighbors to be happy with me, and I don't want people driving by my house saying, "Oh my God, can you believe she doesn't mow her yard?" I don't want that, and I'm guessing that a lot of you don't either. And so there are ways to kind of not necessarily work around the HOA, but work within the limits. And some of you live in very restrictive HOAs. I do. And some of you live in places that have HOAs really more as a practical thing. And you probably know where that is. But one of the things you can do is, there are a lot of different native plants that come in different sizes. So we have 27, I think, is the number of native goldenrods that live in James City County. Some of them are 2 feet tall, and some of them are 8 feet tall. So you need to, one of the things you want to get in the habit of, if you want to add natives to your, and this is a little bit of a problem, because you really want to be in the habit of reading your tags. So you want to read your tags, do your research ahead of time. A lot of our native plant nurseries, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too, a lot of our native plant nurseries don't really use the pretty the nice tags that go in that tell you if you need sun or shade or water or dry, or a lot of our native plant nurseries don't have that. But they do often have people working there who are experts and who are really happy to tell you. The other thing you can do, I'm going to give you some sources later in the presentation where you can go look and find out what plants need what conditions. And where that will help you is you can ask for specific, species. And so that makes it a lot easier. So where is the happy medium? What we're going to talk about today, a couple different things. We're going to talk a little bit about reducing your lawn. And we're going to talk about adding a pollinator garden. If you're a follower of Doug Tallamy, he talks about homegrown national parks. And do you know what that? Does everybody know that? Everybody know Doug Tallamy and his homegrown national park? So it's essentially planting a little spot in your yard. There's another author that I heard within the last year who her idea is. I can't think of what her idea is. Her idea is pollinator victory gardens. So after World War II, people planted gardens, and her idea is to have people plant pollinator gardens to help save our pollinators. And I think when people say pollinators or hear pollinators, the first thing they think of is what? Bees. You think of bees? That's good. I was thinking you think of butterflies. I'm with my I'm thinking my head is in with my master naturalist friends. They would all be thinking of butterflies. But bees, flies, wasps are all big pollinators, and bees do a whole lot more pollinating than butterflies do. So there are a couple different, there are several. Now, I just talked to Dennis before the meeting. Now in New York, do you know of any, are there any people who are talking around doing?
Not in my area, no.
Okay. So and then I think probably what most of you will want to do is just replace or add some natives here and there. So we're going to talk about those things. And I don't know if any of you are starting over, but I've got a little bit of information on that as well. So what are the decisions you need to make? So you guys know, you've heard cultivars, you've heard nativars, you've heard straight species. So cultivars are bred to change something about a flower. So maybe they want, what things might they want to change? Color.
Thorns.
Did you say thorns? Okay, get rid of the thorns. Flowers, yeah, size. So all those things can be changed in a cultivar. Nativars are cultivars of native plants. So let's talk about goldenrod. If I want my goldenrod to be shorter, but I want the same flower, then we can work on that. But nativars are a cultivar of a native plant. So, and then a straight species is as it would live in the wild. So a straight species is just the way we would see it if we saw it out in the woods or out in the meadow or something. Another decision. So neonicotinoids are a type of insecticide that's systemic. So a lot of plant breeders are growing plants so that bugs don't eat them. So you can see down there, I took this right off Texas A&M's, I took it right from Texas A&M. But we need to watch for this, and this is something that we need to ask when we're shopping. Is this something that is do your growers use this? We need to be asking that question because we really don't want to use them, because what it does is this was something that they used, that farmers used, because if you think about it, it makes sense. If I can grow my plant so that bugs won't eat it, that's a good thing, right? No, right, well, the farmers thought it was a good thing. And so that's one of the things that has happened to the plants that come through the nurseries as well. So it's something we need to ask about. And we not only need to ask at the big box stores, we also need to ask at our local nurseries. We need to ask at our native plant nurseries. Ask the question if you can't pronounce it, because I have a heck of a time. My friend Deb over there gave me a little lesson yesterday. But I only said it once, you notice. But you can call them neonics. They know what you're talking about. So just ask the question. And we need to work on buying plants that don't have those. Because if they're killing the beetles and the fleas, guess what else they're killing? All the pollinators. So there are a lot of reasons why our pollinator numbers are down. And this is one of them. So I love this because I don't know how many plants I've bought, but I've bought a few where I've said, oh, look at my native plant that I bought. And someone who is more of an expert than I would say, oh, it's native somewhere, because they all are native somewhere. So if you decide you want to add native plants to your property, or you want to add native plants, if you're working on a project and you want to focus on some native plants, you need to think about how native are they going to be? Are they going to be native to the United States? Native, you want to do a 100-mile radius? Native to Virginia, 100-mile radius is even smaller than Virginia, because Virginia is pretty darn long, and we have the mountains, we have the Piedmont, we have the coastal plains, so we have a very wide range of plants. We also have, we're pretty close here to North Carolina. And we're also pretty close to Maryland. And I don't know how far we are we're probably a couple hours or 3 hours from West Virginia, aren't we? I don't know, haven't been that way for a while. So do you want something that's Hampton Roads? Do you want something that's James City County? So that the Virginia flora will tell you by county what's native. And there are plants, that have a very wide range. I mean, there are plants, I'm gonna show you a slide in a little bit, that's a slide from Missouri. But Missouri and Virginia, where we are, share a lot of the same native plants. Now, they may not, they didn't grow up in Missouri, but they're the same plants. So that's something else that you need to decide. I bought something this year that I thought was really pretty. They were called pinks. And I said to my friend, oh, I got these native plants, and that was they're native somewhere. But they actually are native to Virginia. I'm not sure where. So with all planting decisions, it's the same, whether they're native or whether they're not native. And so the decision's the same. You want to put the right plant in the right place. So you want to look at sun, you want to look at soil, and you want to look at whether it's wet or dry. And this picture is, I believe, a cultivar of mountain laurel. And it's also, so it has been, I think the flower has been changed a little bit, and also it's a dwarf variety. And I know you guys have heard this before, but you know that if something's a dwarf variety, doesn't mean it's small. It just means it's a dwarf of the original. So if you have a dwarf magnolia tree, it's not going to be 3 feet tall. And it's this, I don't know how tall this is going to be, but it's a real slow grower. So I have this in front of my house, mountain laurel. The other thing you want to consider is removing invasive plants where you can. And if you want to know what is invasive, the Department of Conservation and Recreation has a nice little list, and it lists them as far as what's important, what are the worst of the natives, of the invasive. So invasive plants have come here from someplace else or have been brought here from someplace else and then have overtaken And I think the middle slide there is Phragmites. So if you've been out, if you have a boat or you go kayaking or anything, you probably have seen Phragmites here. So does anybody know why Phragmites, how Phragmites got to the United States?
Shipping.
That could be part of it, but it also is a very good plant for removing heavy metals from water. So these plants that have, or these like plants where you manufacture things, when they have wastewater in their ponds, they could add Phragmites, and the Phragmites would help cleanse that wastewater. So it was brought here for a good reason, a useful reason, but then it escaped, because you can see those nice big seed pods on there. It must have 1 million seeds on them. And then the bottom one, I think, is probably all of our, oh, that's wavy leaf grass. I thought it was stilt grass. So wavy leaf grass looks like stilt grass, only it has wavy leaves. But you probably have seen stilt grass too. So something important that you can do is if you have some of these native plants, and you can go to this Department of Conservation and Recreation, it has a big list of all the natives or all the invasives. If I misspeak, I'm sorry. It'll have a nice list of the invasives and it has them ranked. And if you have some of these in your yard, then it might be a good idea if you want to replace it, if you want to get some natives, take out some of your invasives and replace them with natives. There are also a lot of lists out there that are lists of plant this, not that, and I'll show you a couple of those too. So one of the things you can do is reduce your lawn. Most of us like our lawns. I know I do, and I'm married to Mr. Lawn Man. And that's my lawn. Isn't that pretty? It's not very, there's not very much of it, but we have a 1/4 acre. We have about 3,000 square feet of turf, because I measured it with Turf Love. And so I don't have a lot of turf, but one of the things you can do is reduce your turf. And you can do that. You could, if you have a tree in your backyard and you want to take the turf out from underneath it, and you want to add in some low growing natives, you could do that. You could just kind of move the edge of your grass and add natives. And I'm going to also show you some things to figure out what is native. And I've put the links on here. What I'm going to do at the end is I have a couple slides. One will have things that you can Google that'll make it real easy to find these things. And then I have some that do have the websites as well. But lots of, I don't know if this will work. I put these links in here so I can show you this, but you think it'll work?
Give it a try. I think it probably.
Oh, hooray! Yay! I've never put a link in a PowerPoint before, so thank you. So I love that. I mean, I'll tell you, there are so many people out there who are doing so much work on figuring out these websites and all kinds of things, and they're really nice. So if you go to this site, down near, you can just scroll down, and one of the things they recommend if you have shade is wild ginger, lady fern, sensitive fern. If you have a sunnier area, you can do violets. Now, I like violets. My husband doesn't. I pick my battles. We do not have violets in our yard, but I can get him. The foam flower and the green and gold and Christmas fern. Those things I can get him behind those things. Violets maybe not, but if you're really looking for if you really want kind of a native look, the violets are a good way to go. Okay, I'm going to try back here. Oops.
I'll have to.
You got to go to
Get you back.
Okay, I'm not going to do that again. Thank you. Okay. So reducing your lawn is a good way to get some natives in your garden. Another thing is to add a pollinator garden, and that goes with Doug Tallamy's idea and also the pollinator victory gardens. And Doug Tallamy has some good books. I put them on the tables there, and Cherie told me that there's also something from the Xerces Society. And they're all good books about adding, they're really focused, some of them are really focusing on adding insects But to add the insects, you need to get the plants. Isn't that pretty bee balm? Those bees just love it. So, selecting plants and designing, sunny or shady, dry or wet. And I put a couple links here, and this is, do you have phones with you? Okay, we're gonna do a little practice thing here. So if you take your phones out, how many times have you heard that in the lecture? Please take your phones out. So the easy way to get, well, the easy way I think is, mine's already on here. This has a whole website on there, that HTTPS WDCR Virginia Gov Natural Heritage. If you just Google DCR and Virginia Native Plant Finder, see if that comes up. It should look like a map. There should be a map of Virginia. I don't know if you can see my phone, but it looks like this. I don't know if you can see it. It's got a map of Virginia in different zones. There are many, many plant finders out there, and I've got a list of them here. And you'll find one that you like better than others. But I went to a presentation for solar, where they're doing solar panels out in the country. They have these solar farms, and they are planting natives underneath them. And so DCR has this has this plant finder. So if you scroll down, has anybody found it?
Yes.
Okay, so if you scroll down on that, you can look, there's region, there's plant type, there's uses, there's light, there's moisture. You can put in as many of those parameters as you want. So say we're in the coastal plains, so you want something from coastal plains. And then if you want to put in a plant type, you can. I'm gonna pick, well, okay, I don't want me to, so let's say I want to try grasses, because I'm gonna experiment with doing some grasses in my yard. And then you can put in whatever you need to put in. So if you have a mostly shady yard, put in shade. If you have a mostly sunny yard, or you've got a sunny spot for this, put in light. And then maybe you want to say that you don't want anything more than 2 feet. So this is a really good thing to use when you're trying to limit the size of what you're planting, because face it, that's where we're going to get in trouble with our HOAs if we put that 7-foot goldenrod. Or I have some asters that are about 6 or 7 feet tall too, and I have some cup plant. Not putting that stuff in front of my house. And then you just hit submit and see what comes up. Did you get anything? Yeah, so that's a nice little website, for trying to determine what you can plant in your yard in the space you want. And this next one is a Maryland publication, and if you want to Google it, it's called The Green Book for the Buffer. And I've tried to get a hard copy of it without any luck, but this book has, starting on page 31, I'm not going to go to the link, but starting on page 31, this has plans for you. And they look like this. So all of these designs have trees in them. And so if you have a tree in your yard that you'd like to put a little garden around, this would be a great place to go. Because I'm one of these people, I have no design skills. And so being able to find a design that I can just follow is very helpful for me. And these are also in categories like shade and sun and yes.
What was the website?
If you just do a Google search for the Green Book, Green Book Buffer. Did you get it with that? Was that Bob? Yeah, Green Book Buffer. It's a nice book. I'd like to have a copy of it, but those Maryland people just haven't been cooperative. I lived in Maryland for 21 years. So I love free plans. This one I love. So this is from an organization called Grow Native out of Missouri. Talked about Missouri a couple of minutes ago. I'm originally from Iowa, so Missouri's good with me. thing about Missouri is that it's similar, the weather is similar in Missouri to where we are in Virginia. And if you look at this list of plants, almost every one of those plants is native to here too. So if you look, oh, buttonbush, my personal favorite, had 1,200 of those this year. Buttonbush, goldenrod, I don't know that we have cliff goldenrod, but we have 27 goldenrods, you can find something. Passion vine, I'm gonna show you a passion vine picture too, pretty quick. Purple coneflower is not native to right here, but it's widely used here, and the pollinators do like it. But almost every flower, almost every species on this list is native to here. And this tells you where to plant, what to buy, where to plant. If this is too big, this is up across the top, it says it's 25 feet and then it's 4 feet wide. And then that brown line through the middle, they just put like a split rail fence in there so that it has something to climb on. And then they put a couple different vines, and I know they have passion vine. I think they have a clematis too. So I love this design. I mean, I haven't seen it, of course, but this is what I like to find is things that have somebody who knows far more than I do about what works together, what our bloom times are. Because we have, just like anything else you buy, our native flowers. We have native flowers that bloom very early in the spring. We have flowers that bloom in the middle of the summer. We have flowers still blooming now. And then we have flowers that kind of, you know, like those black-eyed Susans, man, they're happy. They bloom a long, long time. I wish I liked yellow better. I'm not saying I don't have them in my yard though. So I love this plan. I think it's, but this is the kind of thing that I look for, is that someone else has kind of done something to, somebody who has some education in this has put this together. Now, I gotta also tell you, those people in Northern Virginia, the overachievers live in Northern Virginia. How many of you moved here from Northern Virginia? Yeah, I knew a couple of you must have. Yeah, those people in Northern Virginia, they are doing work for us. Thank you, Northern Virginia. So I love this too. So on the left is a top 10 list for Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia has a lot of the same plants as us too. And this is an audubonva.org. Top 10 ground covers, top 10 shrubs, top 10 canopy and understory trees, top 10 native wildflowers, top 10 deer resistant wildflowers. Don't you want that one? So I saw this looking around and I thought that is like the greatest thing on earth. So audubonva.org will get you this information. And those are all linked. That blue stuff's all links. Then on the other side, again, Northern Virginia, Plant Nova, that's Northern Virginia, plantnovanatives.org. And then along the top of that webpage, when you go to that one, they have a quick start guide. And it tells you, it just walks you through and tells you everything you need to do. And then it has these wonderful 5 easy shady plants, 5 easy shrubs. And I think above that must be 5 easy perennials. But they have about 10 rows of those 5 easy plants. How much better can that be? I just think it's wonderful. And thank you, Northern Virginia, because they do it so we don't have to. Oh, let's see. So I told you I talked a little bit about plant this, not that. Those dang Bradford pears, fringe trees, serviceberries. Serviceberry, you kind of have to watch out for it if you have cedar trees, because that we get the rust. Serviceberry is related to apples, and they'll get rust on them, so you have to kind of watch that. Butterfly bushes, a button bush, sweet pepper bush. What's the other one? The sweet spire, Virginia sweet spire. Those are all nice, low growing. They do not have the bloom time that the butterfly bush has. That butterfly bush blooms early to late too. But and we do like our butterfly bushes here, but they really are quite invasive. Some of them are less so than others, where they've done some of that cultivating. But the button bush is, I have 2 button bushes in my yard. They do like swampland, but they grow right up. I think the sprinkler might get them at my house a little bit, so I get a little water on. But I also have a Virginia sweet spire, and those plants are just covered with pollinators when they're blooming. Periwinkle, have you guys seen much periwinkle here? I don't see oh, you're nodding yes. Is it in your neighborhood, Patricia? Yeah? Okay, so periwinkle and also English ivy, there's some options. We have some nice native shorter grasses, some of the sedges, and then there's an alligator spurge. But ferns, Virginia creeper, foamflower, those can all be replace those low-growing, viney invasives. Get rid of your Japanese honeysuckle for coral honeysuckle. And I got my wild quinine in there because I really like that plant. Does anybody else have that at their house? It's a neat plant. And DWR has a plant this, not that, but you can just do a Google search for Virginia plant this, not that, and you'll get these lists. When you're adding to your yard, you want to add in layers. So a lot of times we do have ground covers, and I think most of us are really good with our perennials. But I think that the layer we miss the most is the shrubs, and we have a lot of nice shrubs. We have spice bush, and we also have some nice understory trees. But if you have a spot in your yard that's just not doing much, beautyberry is a pretty big bush, but it can also be trimmed very radically. But beautyberry right now has the really pretty berries on it. If you want to see it growing, take a drive around Jamestown Island. But when you're planting, just add layers. And if you're missing any of these layers, you can add something in there. And then I showed you the adding height. So the plant on the left is that coral honeysuckle, and then the plant on the right is a native wisteria. Now the native wisteria its bloom is not as long as the one that people don't really like much, but it's quite pretty, but it does not have nearly as long of a bloom time as the honeysuckle does. The honeysuckle in my yard, some years it's bloomed all 12 months. So it's a big bloomer. And the wisteria is not quite as long. And I don't know if I have a picture of it, but I also have, I actually have 4 little trellis things. One this year I planted Virginia creeper on, just to see how it did. And it's really pretty right now. Somebody was telling me the other day that the British exported poison ivy. Have you noticed how pretty it is now? We just took a trip up to the Northeast, up to New England a couple weeks ago. Poison ivy was beautiful. It's just beautiful. I don't have it on the trellis, but I do have Virginia creeper because I just wanted to try it. And then I have a clematis out front, and so what I did was I kind of wing it on a lot of stuff I do just to see what happens. And I planted a passion fruit. I just dug a hole and stuck it in the ground, probably ripped it open. And I planted it right by the mailbox. Boy, that baby, it's just come alive. And I've been planting passion vine for about 4 years, and this year is the first year that I've seen it's the host plant for variegated fritillary butterflies. And this is the first year I've seen caterpillars on it, so I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, so if anybody's starting over, got a new house, you just moved, you don't have much of anything, there's an organization called Wild Ones. Wild Ones is pretty similar to our Virginia Native Plant Society. They have groups, they don't have anything here in Williamsburg, but they have these plans for entire lots. And this one that I've used is from Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is the closest area to us. And if you look at the list of plants, almost all the plants used in this plan are also native here or can easily be substituted. But if you need to start over, this Wild One site has, I think they have maybe 8 or 10 of these full yard plans. But you can use bits and pieces of them. If you need design help, you might not. I do. Okay, here we go to our resources. Our website has a link to the Homegrown National Park. It has a tab that you can click on that'll get you to the Homegrown National Park. And there are many, many resources on that. And our website has quite a few resources linked. And then what I did with these online resources was I just gave you the name, and this is something you can Google, because I find this easier. I'm a Googler. I would rather do that than type in a website that's got 75 characters. So Plant Virginia Natives, that'll give you a good website. Native Plants for Southeast Virginia. Do you all have this publication? Okay, a lot of you do. I see heads nodding. If you do not have it, I just bought this one. I went to the Pawpaw Festival. That lets you know how excited my life is. Went to the Pawpaw Festival and somebody had these for sale for $5. You can probably buy them online too, but because they are still in print. But if you go to some gardening, I know that I've picked them up at the gardening symposium at Christopher Newport in the spring. If you haven't been to that, it's usually pretty good. But you can pick them up at things like that. Then the other one, but this is also available. It's also electronic. But a lot of us of a certain age like a book in hand, and I'm that way too. So, but this is available electronically. And if you just Google native plants for Southeast Virginia, it'll pop, and look for the goldfinch. It'll pop right up because these are available for all the regions of Virginia. So there are several of them. Then there's the green book for the buffer. I already talked about that. That's out. And if it doesn't pop up, which is green book for the buffer, add Maryland to it. Native plants for wildlife habitat and conservation landscaping. That's this book. This one's a little harder to get your hands on. I think I ordered it on, I think I got it on Amazon or something. I'm not sure because again, I like the book and I had taken my copy to a landscape love visit and it rained. So I needed a new one. So I ordered this online and paid way more than I should have for it. I paid less than $10, but still. This is something else that you might be able to pick up. The nice thing about this one is that in the back, so it has all the pages set up. It has a little thumbnail of what the plant looks like when it's blooming. It has what it attracts, how it grows, where it grows. So it has a lot of information. But then in the back, it has these lists. Like there's plants to use as ground covers, plants for spring and fall color. But then it has plants for wet areas, plants for a wet meadow, plants for a dry meadow. And it's all the botanical names. So if you're not a botanical wizard, you might have to do a little Google search on those. That's what I do. But a very good book, a very good resource to have.
It's electronic too.
It's electronic too. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's what, yeah, all these are. And Northern Virginia Master Gardeners, they also have, are Kay and Elvin here? I know Kay and Elvin do they listen to a lot of webinars and stuff out in Northern Virginia, but Northern Virginia, thank you, Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia Master Gardeners do a lot of really good educational things. Okay, plant finders. That first plant finder, this is to figure out what plants you need. That's what I'm calling plant finders. But all of these organizations have online plant finders. So you put in your parameters, or if you know the common name of something, but you don't know how many species, like if you put in black-eyed Susan, then if you were on wildflower.org and you put in black-eyed Susan, it would come up with a whole bunch of different black-eyed Susan varieties. But all of these have plant finders. And if you look around at the different ones, you'll figure out which ones are best suited to what you want. Okay, finding plants. This is a dilemma for most of us. I think it's getting better, or maybe I'm just driving farther, I don't know. We have local and regional native plant sales. We have local ones. We also have the Virginia Native Plant Society has a native plant list that they keep updated, native plant nursery list. And so you can just go to their website, vnps.org, and it will give you it'll give you that nursery list, a nursery list. There are several around Richmond. There are a few down toward Virginia Beach. Sometimes if you go to some of these programs, they'll have native plants for sale. I have bought a lot of seedlings through buyvirginiatrees.com. There are Maryland's the forestry department for the state of Virginia. We also have, I've also bought through Missouri and through Maryland. Purists don't like that. They think that we need to keep things, try to plant acorns that we find here to grow our oak trees, and I get that, but sometimes it's really difficult to find that. So you can also mail order, and I think that's another just finding. This fall, I had a group of friends, and we ordered. When I listened to the woman who did the pollinator victory gardens, she said if you're doing a great deal of planting, to buy plugs, because after a couple of years they're going to look just as nice as the ones that they catch up fast. So I ordered 5 flats of plugs. The plugs had 50 plugs per flat, and then 5 of us, well actually 4 of us split 4, and one person needed all the same plant, but we split up the 4 flats, so we each got like a dozen of each plant instead of 50. And it worked out. Well, I'll let you know in the spring if it worked out. My neighbor said the rats ate all hers, but I don't know how that went. But mail order is another option, and sharing with friends. Make friends with people who are experimenting. They'll be glad to get rid of stuff because they do spread. Don't gather things from public parks or private land unless you have permission. I mean, I know people have even at the botanical garden, people have said, oh, can we take some of these? No. Thank you very much. Do you guys have any questions? Oh. Thank you, somebody had one.
Have you found that moles are less harmful than native plants? Moles and balls.
I kind of.
Repeat the question.
Are native plants more resistant to moles and voles? Not that I know of, but I just heard heard about planting some kind of product that's sharp around to mix it in. I don't know what it is. I haven't tried it, but I kind of live happily with the moles and voles. I weigh quite a bit, so I just walk around my yard and stomp their little mounds. I'm a nice person. I've done things like throw peppermints down the mole holes. I've also done put a pot over. Oh gosh, this is still being recorded. I'm going to be in trouble. Trap them. So there are a lot of different ways to. I just try to live with them, and I don't have. I mean, I have a problem, but I don't have a huge problem. Thank you. And I've got books on the table. I'll just leave them there if anybody wants to look at them. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Judy. That was really, really